Day 2, KNOW2019. Today's a big day because I'm going to be on the panel talking about Zero Trust today. We're going to continue to take you guys back behind the scenes, get some more interviews, and learn all about the good stuff that's going on in identity. Of course, it's going big in Vegas. Let's get to it.
One.
All right, guys, we're back, KNOW2019, and I got another good friend of mine, Mr. Matt Topper. So, Matt, what do you think of the conference so far?
It's been good. A lot of players that we don't typically see at identity conferences.
Yeah.
So it's good to see some newcomers showing up for the first time, really, in the public space, and talk about their wares and how people who traditionally haven't been in the identity world think about it as they move in.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting perspective to listen to them.
Right. From a talk or panel perspective, like what's been the one that's had the most interest for you so far?
So I mean, I don't want to kiss your butt, but the panel on Zero Trust was really good.
Okay.
Right? It was very much right. It's not go buy a vendor solution. It is a philosophy of how do you do Zero Trust, and it is a combination of a lot of pieces of your infrastructure, and to take baby steps to get there. Right. Google took 7 years.
Yeah.
And that's freaking Google.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, they wrote the 6 docs on the blueprint on how to do it, but guess what? It's going to take you a decade at least if you start now. And it's a commitment.
Yeah, you know, I think that's very interesting because we always reference that Beyond Corp doc all the time, and everybody talks about it, but nobody talks about that point, right? That it's like, look, yeah, they published the doc and told you about it, but it took them 7 years, right? So Google, who for all intents and purposes has an unlimited, amount of resources to throw behind this thing, because let's face it, if they want money, they're gonna go find a way to get money. So, and it took them, to your point, 7 years to go and do that. So, one of the things I really wanted to hit on coming out of that was like, look, this isn't something. Don't get all excited because it's a new word, a new way of looking at it. It's just a different perspective. Right. It's the same stuff you've already been doing, right? But now you know where to apply like those trust factors, and so hopefully, they kind of sinks in. I think I've liked a lot of the talk around self-sovereign identity here, right? I didn't expect it as much. When I was looking at the agenda and the talks, I saw it popping up, but just so many people that I've talked to that literally, I'm not ready to call them experts yet, but they live and breathe in that world.
Right.
And it's always nice to talk to those people because that's where you get the real information, right? Like not the little marketing bullshit pitch of self-sovereign identity. It's like, no, I don't want to hear that shit. What are you doing with it, right? And so I think that's going to be an interesting space, specifically on the customer side over the next couple of years that I really would like to see take off. So with that, tell them a little bit about what you do, because I realize that I introduced who you are, but I didn't tell them anything about what you actually do, so I'm going to let you do that.
Sure. So I own a consulting company called UberEther. We focus on helping organizations actually take advantage of identity and protect themselves better. So as they're moving towards a Zero Trust model or thinking about how do I protect robots in RPA, or how do I better do service-to-service integration, because everything behind our firewall is still in the clear, which sadly we'll see a lot lately. We help organizations build a plan and execute on that plan to be safer, whether that's internal within their organizations or external with the consumers that are interacting with them.
Cool. And then did you have a chance to see, so in the expo hall, they have that little whiteboard. Did you see that they had the question on there, what identity means to you? Have you seen that yet?
I have not.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you the question. So when you think of identity, what does identity mean to you?
Oof. Anything, person, thing, object, service that has to be governed.
Okay.
And how that thing, whether it's human or machine, interacts with other things effectively.
Okay. Make sure you go on the whiteboard. You got to put that on there.
I'm not sure there's not enough space.
Oh, there's space. Nobody's writing anything on there. That's the other part I thought was very interesting. I was like, that's this whiteboard's like, yeah, nobody's afraid to write anything down. I was like, all right, I'm gonna just save this. I'm gonna actually go there and draw a circle and save a space for me. I was like, I'm gonna write an entire dissertation right down here. But no, so you know what? This has been my first No conference. Is your first No conference? It is. And I'm really I like what they're doing. I like the kind of excitement they're trying to bring around it. What would you like to see going into No 2020?
So I'd love to see less panels, more expert implementations.
Okay.
Or not even expert, real case studies, right? Organizations of, hey, this is hard.
Right.
And these are the pitfalls we saw, right? I think I haven't found a good identity conference that focuses on that.
Okay.
And I'd love to see that because, right, we both ID Pro members, and every week in the Slack channel, there's a big problem that comes out, and we've got 20 different organizations say, this is how we solve that problem. Right. This is where it worked, this is where it didn't work, this is where it's still sticky on the edges. And being able for organizations to just come out and talk about that stuff would be great.
You know what? It's so funny you bring that up because Mike and I just did a podcast. We recorded the last podcast last week, which I realized that I need to mix and get out. But I was talking about how, we were talking about like RSA, the different conferences, right? And how we don't have conferences that focus on like solutions. We have these conferences that have vendors that tell you how to do all this stuff, right? But what we don't really have is somewhere where people can come and say, okay, great. How do I actually do this, right? Or we don't see, to your point, we don't see enough of that where people can come in and realize, like, this is how you put this stuff together, right? This is what worked for my organization. We are a 50,000 user organization. We have these compliance issues, and we had a 2-person team. Versus we are a million, employee user, and we had a team of 100, and we have competition. This is how we, like, you know what I mean? To understand, like, the scale and size of this and how all that changes based on what you're implementing. Because I still think we still talk to people and it's like, look, you use these solutions and they think it's still a one-size-fits-all type of thing. It's like, look, I can tell you all these things to do till I'm blue in the face, but until I get to your organization, like, it's going to change, right? And I think that's something like, it would be really cool to get a conference like that. So
yeah, fully agree. And like, a lot of small organizations, it's okay that you're still running on shell scripts and CSV files.
Right.
Because for your level of risk, you don't need to buy a big vendor product and spend $1 million putting it in place.
Yep. As long as you've got the protocols in place, you can control it, you can govern it, use what works.
Yep.
Cool. Matt, man, appreciate it as always. Thanks.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys in a little bit.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is David Lee. I was actually just walking in the area and they told me to go get on stage, so I don't really know. I'm just kidding. So I work for SellPoint, a senior identity strategist. It's a fancy title that just means I've been doing identity for far too long. And yeah, I just happen to talk about Zero Trust and love the fact that it's a buzzword, kind of like everyone else. I want to make sure that we take it from a buzzword to just kind of a way of how we look at implementing security. So what I think of it, and I've explained it to people a couple of different ways, but the best way that I think that I would like to explain it, that most people tend to get it, is really Zero Trust is just pretend your firewall is not there, right? How do you now build your application if there is no firewall, right? So we got so used to, for the longest time, like, oh, I've got a firewall, I got VPN, I got this, and I trusted all these other things were there, so I didn't have to, in my application or however I was using my data, I didn't have to worry about all these other things. So I just assumed once you were in that, quote unquote, I can trust you. So Zero Trust is just the opposite of that. Is start thinking of it as, okay, when you build this data, when you build this application, when you build these APIs, imagine that there's nothing there, right? And so I tell people the same thing with the house. Like, so think about it like how you protect your house, right? Pretend there's no fence or there's no door. Right now, what do? Like, oh, I really want to have my master bedroom downstairs, right by the front door. Okay, but if there's no front door, is that where you want your master bathroom or your master bedroom? I mean, you may be a nudist and you're like, yeah, that's exactly where I want it. Totally fine. But the whole point is, it makes you think about that. And that's, to me, like the biggest thing about Zero Trust. It just makes us rethink how we go about building these things instead of just relying on stuff that's already there to kind of, quote unquote, do the hard work for us. Yeah, I think it's, we definitely have on the technology side, we've advanced enough to where you can make this a lot easier. I can't speak for whether or not the government's ever going to do it. Like, I started my career there, like, good luck. But for everybody else, it comes down to like the one thing that, if you've been in this industry long enough, right, integration with different products, right, we've always kind of talked about it, and vendors will sit there and try and sell it to you, and it's always kind of been snake oil, right? But technology's finally gotten to a point where most products are API driven, right? We know how to build good APIs, we know how to, interact and exchange data. So some of that's going to make that a lot easier with the ability to come in and bring in these products and have these products actually integrate out of the box. Because when you start really walking through that framework of Zero Trust, it's really about being able to, authenticate and authorize the user constantly at different points, right? And bring in my different products to be able to do that, right? Okay, so David says he's this. Why does he say he's this? What does he want to do? Did he get the right access? Is he supposed to have that access, right? All these things that you can constantly kind of ask this question. We now have the ability with, standards, every guy has got REST APIs, JSON, SCIM, you've got these abilities to exchange this information and do it quickly. So it's going to be messy in the beginning, but I think at least we have the tools to do it now, more so than we had in the past. right? Before you said integration, I got to make these two products talk. It was like, oh, okay, great. There's two developers sitting there looking at each other going, okay, well, we're going to be here all night, and then we'll just figure out how to make this happen. Now at least the vendors are kind of getting their act together and saying, okay, look, I'll establish an API, I'll do these things, I'll make it easier for them to exchange this data, and then we have to start kind of laying out the blueprints and the kind of frameworks to allow customers, everybody to kind of go through these steps. So my viewpoint's going to be very biased. Not because I work for SellPoint, but mostly because I'm always in identity. Like you start with your identity, right? Like regardless of how you want to handle it, right? Buy whatever product you want. SellPoint would shoot me for saying that doesn't really matter. But you have to start to understand. Okay, do I understand who all my identities are and where they are, and the data that I'm going to use to therefore try and enable all these other integrations or all these products, right? So let's just start simply with authentication. So I have to start somewhere and say, where's my store for all my identities? Do I trust that data? How am I getting that data? Do I have the right attributes to make these decisions? Number one, right? Nothing actually changes with our playbook. It's still the same stuff. What am I trying to protect? What do I need to do? But now we just look at it and go, okay, now that I have all of this, right? How do I go about making sure that when this application needs it, how do I get the information I need so that application at that time can make a decision of whether or not I want to trust this person, right? I'm not depending on my firewall to stop them or my proxy to give me something. I need to be able to authenticate and authorize whenever I need to do an action. Well, to do that, I've got to have somewhere to look to go get that information. So I'll tell everybody, like, start with your identities, right? Because I guarantee you, if you go look at your identity repositories today, and none of you will raise your hand and say you trust any of that data that's in there. And if you do, you're a liar.
Flopped.
All right, guys, so this is a wrap on day 2, KNOW2019. It's a jam-packed day. We talked about Zero Trust, we had the panel, we had some interviews, got a chance to see some other things that's going on in the expo hall. So we're gonna wrap this up. Tomorrow is the last day of the conference, so we'll check in and see who party's a little bit too hard tonight and can't make it tomorrow. Guys, it's been totally fun having you guys along with me. We'll see you next time.